and be right back.
It is obvious to the most simple-minded that Loki is of an inferior breed.
The obvious visual evidence, Commissioner, is that he is of the same breed as yourself.
Are you blind, Commander Spock? Oh, look at me.
I thought you scientists were supposed to keep an open mind.
There's a difference between keeping an open mind and believing something because you want it to be true.
Your friend Spock is a logical man.
I find your arguments strewn with gaping defects in logic.
Most illogical reaction. We demonstrated our superior weapons. They should have fled.
You mean they should have respected us?
Of course.
Mr. Spock, respect is a rational process. Did it ever occur to you they might react emotionally? With anger?
Doctor, I'm not responsible for their unpredictability.
You do not think like the others. There are no colors to your patterns of logic. There's only black and white.
Logical, unemotional, completely pragmatic. And we poor, irrational humans whip them in a fair fight. Now you'll find yourself back among us illogical humans again.
Which I find eminently satisfactory, Doctor. For nowhere am I so desperately needed.
Because she feels. I don't. All I know is logic.
Will you try to understand how we feel about our life here? About each other?
Emotions are alien to me. I'm a scientist.
You're gonna leave here without them? Run off on some wild goose chase halfway across the galaxy just because you found a discrepancy in a hydrogen cloud?
Doctor, I'm chasing the captain, Lieutenant Uhura, and Ensign Chekhov, not some wild aquatic fowl.
Mr. Spock, you have a remarkably logical and analytical mind.
Thank you. I prefer the concrete, the graspable, the provable.
You'd make a splendid computer, Mr. Spock.
Anarchists call for the release of an imprisoned comrade in Italy, and this is one of the motivations by Italian citizens for protesting, another being something we covered yesterday. We'll play a clip here.
Italians gathered to protest President Zelensky's planned appearance at the closing ceremony of the Sanremo Song Festival. Demonstrators could be seen holding anti-war banners and placards against weapons deliveries to Ukraine as they called on authorities to stop politicizing cultural events and dragging Italy into the conflict. The Ukrainian president had planned to appear at the Sanremo Song Contest final and deliver a speech. The idea was immediately condemned by thousands of Italians who signed a petition against the initiative. Amid growing criticism of the amount of aid Italy has been giving to Ukraine, Italian construction workers face bankruptcy after the government cut back its so-called super bonus program. The 2-year-old tax break had given homeowners a 110% deduction on the cost of home renovations. Workers now fear they won't be able to take care of their families.
The government has scaled back the super bonus law, and now we don't know what to do. We find ourselves with many debts. We have workers and construction sites that we pay every month without any financial return. We are close to bankruptcy due to the Italian government. We're in a situation of total alarm. There are many people unemployed, and the government is not thinking about us. The politicians are thinking of something else. There are many companies that have already closed due to bankruptcy, and many more will soon close. Moreover, there will also be problems with the law for all these business people. Furthermore, there are people who have lost their jobs, people who have been fired, and all thanks to the Italian government, there will be people who will not have money for their families and children.
Meanwhile, government officials are cutting social benefits as the country joined France in agreeing to further arm Ukraine. According to the country's defense minister, Rome is fully committed to arming Kiev and will send its advanced missile defense system to the war zone. This adds to the 110 million euros Rome has already committed since the beginning of the conflict. The move caused anger among locals and raised questions about priorities as the country battles an economic crisis.
This is scandalous. Italy is a country full of debt. Many people are unemployed. Politicians say they have no money. People are increasingly poor, and the government is thinking of buying arms for Ukraine, which does not even represent us. It's a shame. They're financing a country that has nothing to do with us. I would leave tomorrow to go work for a Russian entrepreneur. I don't understand why Russia, which has always been a friend to us as a country, is being condemned, and instead what America is doing is not being condemned. America has invaded others, killed children, bombed countries, but now talks about how bad another nation has done. Why is Russia being condemned instead? Do we want to talk about what the Americans have done by striking countries in complete silence? And the Italian government is spending billions to buy weapons for Ukraine, money that could have been spent in a different way. They're betraying us as a people. They're thinking of a conflict that is not even ours. Europe should not have participated in all of this.
One more clip here. This is including a professor who put together a petition to have Zelensky not appear.
Professor at both the University of California in San Francisco and the University of Turin in Italy. Professor, it's great to have you on the program today. Now, you actually initiated a petition against allowing Ukrainian President Zelensky to speak at this popular Italian music festival. So what were your reasons for that?
Well, we are really fed up of propaganda. I think that, the Western Bloc, NATO, and the US in particular are feeding news to the Italian media system, which is...
like that for a second. Let's try and de-emotionalize this for a second. Let's try and intellectualize this for a second. Let's try and rationalize this for a second.
Badly controlled, and they pretend that the Italians don't understand that the situation and the reality is much different and much more complex of what they are telling us. So, to have in Sanremo, which is perhaps the most important entertaining event in the year, with some 12 million people watching it, and most of the people watching Sanremo would be like, the middle Italy, so to say, people that are not prepared in their own, that kind of are easily captured by propaganda. To hear Zelensky arriving there, depicting himself as an innocent victim of a brutal aggression, is something that talks to the heart of the people and might have a huge political impact in continuing in this crazy positioning of Italy in the global geopolitical arena. You have to understand that Italy has a constitution that came out after World War II, when we were liberated by both the Americans and the Russians. But more than 5,000 soldiers from the Soviet Union died during the resistance in Italy. So we have had a very long-lasting, strong relationship with the Russian people. And this sort of sudden change of political attitude due to, the fact that Italy is not a sovereign country anymore is something that is very, very disgusting to the eyes of people who maintain some critical approach. So I contacted some other intellectuals, some people that are figures of the cultural and political scene in Italy, and we just articulated a note saying, look, the situation is not the one that we are told every single day. The war didn't started 1 year ago. The war has been a process that has to be understood at least in a 15 years perspective, at least after taking into consideration what happened after the fall of the Soviet Union. This sort of narrative that simplifies, the good against the evil is a narrative that is extremely dangerous and is unconstitutional. In our constitution, there is written in Article 11 that Italy really despises the war, rejects the war in a proactive way as a means to solve international controversies. By taking side in a way that is suicidal from the economic perspective for us and is only in the interest of the United States is something that goes against our constitutional understanding and against, I believe, what most of the people think. So in a few days, we got almost 100,000 signatures on our invitation to go to Sanremo, and on Saturday there is going to be a massive demonstration in Sanremo. The point which is important is that the people are actually coming to Sanremo on a platform that is not really just only keep Zelensky out of the festival, which was just a trigger, but is a platform of give us some information that is a little bit more information and less propaganda.
Yeah, and far too many people have, stopped questioning why Zelensky is just appearing at award shows, at popular events, and being praised there, and really the precedent that it sets. Now, you have made a difference. I mean, despite the petition and the protest, the festival's organizers have said that, okay, they won't have Zelensky speak, but they will in a way, in the sense that they'll still let him read a text message, or send a text message, rather, to read at the event. So why, in your opinion, are they doing that? Is that some sort of a compromise, or what does it speak to?
There might be a little bit of both. Certainly, the popular resistance that was triggered by our invitation to go to Sanremo to show with our bodies the fact that there is an Italy that disagrees with this propaganda has created some problem to the public television. They are having its fact that our invitation to go to Sanremo to show with that was triggered by our invitation to go to Sanremo to show with our bodies the fact that there is an Italy that disagrees with this propaganda has created some problem to the public television. They are having issues now of running the show because nominally we changed the government. We have a new government, and what the governments do in so-called Western democracies is that at least as soon as they arrive in power, they substitute the heads of the public televisions in order to control the media and the news. And this is a process that is going on at the Italian radio television right now. So I think that this was instrumentalized from both parties. And maybe what happened was that they tried a compromise. They went back to Zelensky. They said, well, why don't you just send a video or something like that? And he probably backed up a little bit. I don't know. They didn't find a deal. For us, is a partial victory. I don't believe, however, that the fact that an anchorman is reading his message is much different than the fact that he's reading it himself. He's still giving the voice to a country that is in war. And you see, in Italy, we have a law, an old law of 1990, which is a fundamental law that governs the military system in our country, that makes it illegal, clearly, to give arms to a country which is engaged in a war with another country, okay, with no exception. And Ukraine is not an ally of Italy. Ukraine, as you know, is not part of the NATO. We have no treaty of assistance with Ukraine, and so we are forbidden by law to give the arms to Ukraine. Draghi actually introduced an exception to that law in order to make it possible to give weapons to Zelensky, and that was for 2022. And Meloni has now made the exception, in a way, the rule. So now what we are going to do in Sanremo is to discuss the ways in which the people can take it to themselves by popular vote and try to introduce a referendum or something in order to make these exceptions to the rule of not giving guns to fighting sides becoming back something that is reasonable and legal in Italy. It's a long way. This is not. It is only the beginning, but certainly we are trying to set up a global anti-war movement that is not a Western propaganda, but it is something that is really genuinely against the law for people and law for an immediate ceasefire and for putting the people and the populations first.
Yeah, it sounds like the start of a very powerful movement, and we'll continue to follow it to see where it goes. Professor Ugo Mattei, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Time for some Israeli news government. From Italian to Israel. This is star.co.ke. Israel legalizes 9 West Bank settlements or settlement outposts. Palestinians see settlements as a major obstacle to a peace deal with Israel. In summary, in the first such move by the new government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the international community regards all settlements as illegal under international law, though Israel disputes this. The settlements are seen as illegal under international law, and the Israeli government has authorized 9 Jewish settlements in the West Bank, which were previously unauthorized outposts. It's the first such move by the new government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The international community regards all settlements as illegal under international law, though Israel disputes this. Palestinians see settlements as a major obstacle to a peace deal with Israel. They want all settlements and outposts to be removed from the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which they seek for a future Palestinian state. Israel has built about 140 settlements, housing some 600,000 Jews since its occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem in the 1967 Middle East War.
Facts, they're numbers. You can
we have the evidence. No one can dispute the evidence. We heard the evidence. We saw the evidence.
Also on Sunday, Israeli authorities announced mass construction of new homes within established settlements. A statement from Mr. Netanyahu's office said a planning committee would convene in the coming days to approve new settlement homes. The far-right minister, Bezalel Smotrich, said on Twitter these would number 10,000. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, his administration said Sunday in an announcement Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's administration said Sunday's announcement should be condemned and rejected. There's been no immediate comment from the U.S., but Ambassador Thomas Nides previously made clear Washington would oppose such moves. We want to keep a vision of a two-state solution alive. Netanyahu understands that we understand that massive settlement growth will not accomplish that goal, says Mr. Nides or Mr. Nides. Last month, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken criticized settlement activity in the occupied West Bank as an obstacle to peace. Here's another. Israel will lift all curbs on settlement construction, the minister says. Religious Zionist leader Bezalel Smotrich says Israeli-U.S. relations are based on mutual interests, but the administration understands current government must act on Israeli interests, knows well its position on settlements. Finance Minister that one's spelled Bezalel instead of, I've seen Bezalel over and over again. There's a T in there. I think that might be a misprint. Said Tuesday that the right-wing government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will lift all restrictions on settlement construction. Speaking during a press conference at the West Bank outpost of Givat Harel, one of the 9 the government said it will legalize, Smotrich expressed his commitment to continue building settlements and to lift restrictions on construction there. The real answer to terror is to continue to build, to continue to set roots in the land of Israel.
Your inconsistencies are glaringly obvious. What is this nothing you talk about?
This is what we as a government, as a state, as a nation must do. The settlement enterprise thrives thanks to the pioneers who sustained it for many years with great love, with great determination, with great consistency and efficiency. We've now approved 10 settlements, and there's a general clause in the decision that allows us to advance more if need be. My coalition partners understand that this is a logical move.
The whole notion of logic.
Yep. Let's let me load up some data otherwise, see if there's anything else out there. This is real time. It's not exactly easy to search for Palestine news right now because of East Palestine and Ohio. I think it's just a distraction, though. Here's one. Israel's home demolitions, a war on nerves for Palestinians. This is Al Jazeera. East Jerusalem residents know that suspended demolition orders remain in force and may be executed at any moment. Silwan occupied East Jerusalem. Sabah Bader, 57, spent his life savings from working as a chef on an apartment she could finally call her own, hoping for some sense of security for herself and her son. But since she moved into a 13-unit building in the Palestinian neighborhood of Silwan, south of the Old City in East Jerusalem, occupied East Jerusalem, 8 years ago, the single mother's life has been far from secure. Bader and the nearly 100 other Palestinians living in the same building have had the threat of demolition and forced displacement by Israeli authorities constantly hanging over them. Residents of the 13-unit building, at least half of whom are minors, received a final Israeli demolition order on February 5th under the pretext that their building lacks a permit. Days later, following international pressure, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced the demolition would be indefinite. While the building's removal was put off, the demolition order remains in force and may be executed at any moment. Even if they demolish this building, I'll put up a tent and stay here. I'm not better than any of the people living in refugee camps. I'll become exactly like them, Bader told Al Jazeera from her home. Under the new right-wing Israeli government, sworn in late last year, Israeli officials have been fast-tracking the demolition of Israeli-designated illegal Palestinian homes in occupied East Jerusalem, including in the neighborhoods of Silwan, Jabal al-Mukhaber, and Hizma. These Israeli policies mean that at least 1/3 of all Palestinian homes in occupied East Jerusalem lack an Israeli-issued building permit, with more than 100,000 residents at risk of forced displacement, according to United Nations figures. Close to 1,000 other Palestinians are facing forced eviction from their homes in cases filed against them by Israeli settler groups, many with support from the Israeli government. On a real-time check for one more. Here's one regarding the first one we read. Zionist regime authorizes non-illegal West Bank settlements. Extremist regime led by Benjamin Netanyahu continues to implement oppressive policies that cause untold misery to the native Palestinians. This is Islam21c.com. Palestinian protests against illegal Zionist occupation in the West Bank. On Sunday, the so-called security cabinet of the Zionist entity announced that it would be approving 9 illegal West Bank settlements with a view to strengthening the regions. For decades, settlement building in the occupied West Bank has been internationally deemed unlawful. The move is the latest step taken by one of the most hardline ultranationalist Israel regimes to ever hold office. Since the unacceptable formation of the entity in 1948, Zionist entity continues to push false narrative. In a statement released over the weekend, the disastrous move was billed as a reaction to the murderous terrorist attacks in Jerusalem. The statement added that the Security Cabinet decided unanimously to authorize 9 communities in Judea and Samaria, utilizing the name favored by the Israeli regime when describing the West Bank. Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu's office also claimed in the statement, these communities have existed for many years, some have existed for decades. The Civil Administration Higher Planning Committee will be convened in the coming days to approve the construction of new residential units in existing communities in Judea and Samaria. West Bank is a part of Palestine. The West Bank is home to just shy of 3 million Palestinians, with around 500,000 Israeli citizens having illegally located themselves in Palestinian territory. For many years, the Zionist entity has either tacitly given approval of such, and I'll read that one again because, let's continue. For many years, the Zionist entity has either tacitly given approval of such encroachment of Palestinian land or actively promoted buildings, works, and the relocation of Israel's citizens in order to displace the native Palestinians. While the despotic Israeli regime continues to unfairly accuse the Palestinians of engaging in terror attacks and other such incidents, it conveniently glosses over the fact that it's occupied and oppressed the native population for over 75 years. The latest statement and step by the Zionist entity proves the extent to which it's willing to go in order to subjugate the Palestinians of their homeland. All talk, no action. Following Sunday's announcement by the Zionist regime, the U.S. responded by saying it was deeply troubled. The Secretary of State Antony Blinken suggested that the Zionist entity's biggest international donor was against the move. On Monday, Blinken outlandishly said, "We strongly oppose such unilateral measures which exacerbate tensions and undermine the prospects for a negotiated two-state solution." Despite the official verbal response, there's no obvious indication as to whether there will be any punitive measures taken against the entity. The same can be argued for Saudi Arabia, whose foreign minister, Prince Faisal bin Farhan, said during a joint news conference with the European Union's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell. That's all. Well, that was a good one, too. Let's just check for another. Yeah, I appreciate the language in that one. You know, something related to a Zionist. What was it? It was like a Zionist at the beginning, not an entity. Yeah, it was a Zionist entity. The Zionist entity. I do like that. Also, the clarifying Judea and Samaria and West Bank. That's a really pertinent article. Written from a perspective that's understandable, I'd say. Yeah, that one was from 40 minutes ago. Let's see what else we have. Okay, and the last thing we're going to do so I had an idea to extend our Chat GPT segment by incorporating chats from some of the videos we've been watching. So comments, chats. Let's see. This one is on the RT Italian protest against Zelensky's appearance at San Remo Festival occurrence. Let's see what we have here. The people have spoken. This is Paul Haler, 3140. One day ago. The people have spoken. True. They need to get the Italian military to get involved. I don't know. The Italian military might support the right. You know, you never know. It's fascists. True word. We're feeling it in England as well. We, the people, paying for war at the pump and on food. Giles Dillon. Oh, Dillion. He might be Jamaican or from some island. We, the people, paying for. That's really the one that gave it away, the f instead of for. Yeah, same thing in Poland. Ariel Spoko. This is an amazing chat, by the way. Good for them. Zelensky has to go. Let's see what the responses are. This is Karen Steinman. She says Zelensky has to go. She tells us that's good for them, not good for us. Very interesting. The begging oligarch. Italians should express how they really feel with letters addressed to President Sergio Mattarella and American President Joe Sleepy Biden at the White House. He's a professional troll. Yeah, I like this guy. What is it? GACTVDX? See what else we have here. Oh, let's see what's happening in Mersh's comments. Oh, we would do it in chat. I mean, that would be fun too, but I think comments is probably more salient. Expect more and more disasters as HR departments gut institutions of professionals to make room for diversity hires. No gun zone, just sitting in barrel zones. They all have, I guess because it's a very long video, they all have timestamps. Fallout IRL. What are we doing here, boys? Did Sean Oliver ever hear a bad thing about Lanny Puffo? Morning, friends. I can't believe you think the PCR tests are accurate. Well, Mersh, thanks for the laugh. There are worse ways to die than the inevitable cancer and bone disorders. It'll just be a family tradition now, starting with my dad dying of pancreatic. I just thought with all the Captain Planet, Animal Planet, and recycling propaganda, my generation would have been better about not releasing a chemical that will inflict generations of people. We tried. I'll get back to finding that funny at some point, is in reference to the East Palestine, Ohio issue. Dude, the Ottomans are the Turks. Yes, the Ottomans are the Turks. Yep, the Spurgbergs are exhausting. The Two Boomer podcasts do have a point about the feminization of society, but they do it so boring and predictable. We made Mark Harley, as in we watched 2 Lazy Tries videos. You seem very sensitive, man, blocking people that donate. LOL. Yeah, only a highly sensitive person would make this comment. It's truth. Why should anyone take a sheet for small change? Be a man and super chat 100 to 200 and he'll let you. Or are you poor? LOL, cry harder. And a couple more. Oh my gosh, Simcast. Let's see. I mean, these are just too wild and like particular, you know. Let's see what they say in Richard Medhurst's Nord Stream video. What are the comments? Unforgivable what happens with Syria. All people suffering from a natural disaster deserve the same help, whether the quote-unquote West sanctions their countries or not. It's just humane not to do so. Thank you for covering this, Richard. You're a real gem here. Richard John McDougan confirms the Seymour Hersh report with a testimony from his own whistleblower. I don't know about you guys, but when I see a YouTube video from Richard that's an hour or more long, I know it's going to be so juicy. I love when things are put into context and in depth, not just reframed and blow things out of proportion like the mass media. So thanks. It's the era for independent journalists to rise. Great comment. Who's that? South 1328. This is from The Revolution Continues, Block 6182. Never has a truer comment been made. America's an oil company with an army. In this case, the U.S. is an oil company with a Navy, Air Force, and some good friends in Norway. Thank you for covering this story, Richard. I hope we're not at war soon. But if I can't speak with you again, I want to thank you and others for sharing the truth with so many. Power to the people. He writes like a boomer. Bobo Flavor Anas. He's confirming what we already suspected. U.S. is said, given an indication of capabilities, was specific about the pipeline. I'm not surprised at all, Richard. Thank you for your hard work. I really appreciate you. Block Rock 44. Thanks for letting us know, Richard. And not heard about this. And I feel that news likely wouldn't really get around easily if I left it to MSM. All such horrible stuff. Richard, the Anglo-Saxon Guard worked together with the Norwegians to compose a signal, and they helped to build the remote control buoy together with the Norwegians. You don't need an expert to realize who was responsible. I knew from day one. That's Dim Sum Den 5745. From Jason Delvo 3036. Richard, are you coming to DC on February 19th for Rage Against the War Machine? You should be there. You're one of the great voices against imperialism. That's a great comment. Fate whispers to the warrior, you cannot withstand the storm. The warriors whisper back, I am the storm. Love your work, Richard. Thank you for my du'as for your mashallah. La ilaha illallah. Richard, February 19th. Yes, we need you here. We need you there, brother. It would be an honor. Your best work ever, Richard. You've said it all. Tierra Caliente 3914. In the Crimea bridge attack, they used the new technology drones. So, as can be seen in the water before explosions. They dropped the 3 buildings on the 11th of September 2001. Do you honestly think they won't or they can't blow up a pipe? Yeah. Okay, we got one more. Just another Richard? Yeah, this is another Richard one, so it should be some of the same sentiments, but particularly about Pepe Escobar guesting on Richard's show. Thanks a million to both these real investigative journalists. Seymour Hersh's story was not hard to find, but its journalistic integrity and strength to publish the truth is such a sensitive issue. Russian newspaper Moskovich Kosmolets was the first newspaper who wrote about the U.S.-Norway sabotage. Russian naval officer Vladimir Gundarov mentioned also this theory early. A few months ago, the American YouTuber John Mark Dougan received a tip from a military officer who attended Baltops 22, and he gave even more details about what happened, the equipment used, etc. Mr. Dougan, I said Duggan before, Mr. Dougan has made 2 videos about the information verifying Mr. Hirsch's story. It's a childish and unprofessional. The U.S. and Norway does not acknowledge the facts, but instead call Seymour Hersh's story fabrication and nonsense. Lieutenant Colonel Per Espen Strand Lee, press spokesman, Norway Defensive Department and Norwegian Defense Ministry, the story was nonsense. The sabotages must have been approved by Rear Admiral Nils Andreas Stensons, head of Norwegian military intelligence, and got a political green light from Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store. The cat is now out of the box, and U.S. Norway should just tell the truth. They viewed the sabotage as necessary to stop Russian gas supplies to Europe. I'm Russian, that had been working with Norwegians in the oil and gas sector for more than 15 plus years, and I should admit that they were the easiest and pretty much always full of sense customers to deal with compared to Brits, Germans, Americans, and other Europeans. It's really hard to accept, not to believe, but exactly to accept that seemingly independent nation who built its industry from scratch and knows how hard it is could have done anything like that. I guess that's intuitions or my questions to the Norwegian public. How do you define this action? In my understanding, it's an act of terrorism. Do you approve it? Would you be doing anything about it? The USA is committing international terrorism once again, and with no accountability makes my blood boil. Pepe is awesome. He won't let you finish a sentence, though. Great work as always. Never forget what the U.S. has done all over the world since World War II. I never doubted for a moment as to where the perpetrators, including Norway and M16 and possibly Poland, all coordinated from the U.S. I believe the basic idea, plan, or plans of how to blow up Nord Stream started long before 2021 and probably even dated before 2010 when Nord Stream 1 was on the drawing board. Even at that time, U.S. heavily sanctioned contractors supplying militaries for the pipeline. Of course, the precise operational details of the plan could not be established until it was ready to put it into execution and all the necessary field conditions were put in place. Delta Squared 7777 is well read. And I think we'll end it there. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I'm communicating. And open a channel here. Just a second. All right, great. Just check the stream, and that last portion was with the blank screen as I was going through the chats, but the audio was still there, so I'm going to keep that in. And at this point, let's open that channel. And on my mark,